everyone, and thank you for joining us at Conversations on Sex, Addiction, and Relationships. My name is Jeannie Vitoni, and I'm here with my friends and colleagues, Tim Stein, Dan Drake, and our wonderful Wendy Conquest was not able to make it today. So we have an email address that folks send us comments, questions, ideas, suggestions, and today is one of those episodes. So today is the mailbag day. Tim, what's the first mailbag question that we were going to talk about today?
First mailbag question. Your podcast is very helpful. Thanks. Love that. Thank you so much.
Is that it?
And that was the end.
But wait, there's more.
I learned that my sex addict husband has a binge purge subtype sex addiction. He states that his longest purge was around a year or 18 months. I'm struggling to know if he is in legit recovery or if he is simply in a purge. Please help. Thanks in advance.
That is a great one. Thank you for reading that. And so so for listeners, when someone's talking about binge purge, we sometimes call it also an on-off cycle, where someone is using the substance in a compulsive, addictive way, and then makes a lot of effort and stops. Stop for a period of time. And then whatever's going on, precursors come in and they're using again. So you've got this on-off pattern, which sometimes is months, but often years. So good question. Good question. Do you guys use the same terminology, on-off, binge purge? What do you guys use when you're describing this?
I've used binge purge because I think people understand it. Also in the SDI, sexual dependency inventory, it has a questionnaire for the binge purge. So sometimes I'll use that. But I sometimes will talk about it acting out versus acting in. When someone's on the stop period, usually you'll see behaviors that go with it. They'll kind of be more shut down potentially. So I don't know. I mean, I sometimes talk to acting in versus acting out.
Okay, hold on. Before Tim gives his ideas, acting in, for folks, what does that mean when you're using that phrase? What does that term mean for you?
I mean, there's the phrase in alcohol in AA, being a dry drunk.
Yep.
You might not be doing the behaviors, but a dry drunk, when someone uses that term, I think acting in, we can't usually selectively stop behaviors. There's going to be tells oftentimes, not always, but let's say if most addicts are trying to medicate pain or difficult experiences, can't just selectively shut down certain experiences. I'm going to shut down everything. I'm going to suppress everything. So they either could be more shut down, maybe passive aggressive, maybe get more offensive and angry. So like there's this kind of stuff that goes when I'm trying to hold like holding a beach ball underwater. It takes effort to do that.
So would I be correct to say acting in would be continuation of unhealthy coping skills, difficulty communication, maybe continued of chaoticness, and a lack of acting out in this particular section?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. Tim?
Or sometimes too, I'm curious too, sometimes we'll see trading addictions. So maybe they're not acting out sexually, but they start overeating, or they, throw themselves into work, or become obsessed about, something like you'll see it shift to something else. So they may not be, and then when called on it, they'll get defensive oftentimes because, hey, I'm not acting out sexually, but then the partner, oftentimes the betrayed partner is going to see all those, but you're still acting very addicty to me. It feels similar, and it feels threatening and unsafe.
And I hear you. We call it the whack-a-mole of, I'm not acting out sexually, but I'm drinking more. Okay, so I'm not drinking more, but now I'm objectifying more. Okay, I'm not objectifying as much as I was, but now I'm back to smoking cigarettes or whatever. Okay. So binge purge, on, off, act in, act out, whack-a-mole. Tim?
I'm realizing as we're having this conversation that I use binge purge differently. And I think of it as a little bit separate from the stuff that we were just talking about. And mostly when I think about binge purge, the terminology is something that we borrowed from eating disorders. And when you're talking about it related to an eating disorder, there's the binge, which is the compulsive behavior to engage. I want to, if it's a eating disorder, it's I'm binging on food. I am compulsively engaging with the food. Or if I'm purging, it's I'm getting rid of it, but it's that compulsive energy that kind of I'm pushing it away. I'm compulsively not wanting it. And so when it comes to sex addiction, I don't think of a binge purge pattern as somebody who has swapped addictions. And I also don't think of a binge purge pattern as I've been in sobriety for a while and then I've relapsed because I didn't hold my boundaries or I didn't recognize that, the neurological neural pathways of our addiction are always going to be there. And if we go back to those behaviors, it's going to come back to the surface very quickly. I think of binge purge as if I'm in a binge pattern, I'm acting out with my sexual behaviors, whatever those sexual behaviors are. And when I'm in a purge pattern, I am compulsively pushing those behaviors away, and I'm kind of creating an anorexic phase. It's like, and when I think about binge purge, it's often not like specific to if my client's a porn masturbation guy, it may not be um, limited to only porn and masturbation. It's I may be binging on in porn and masturbation, but when I go into my purge cycle, not only am I pushing the porn and masturbation away, but I'm often also pushing sexuality with my partner if I'm in a relationship away as well, because anything that has that sexual energy, fantasies that come up and I have almost that cringe in my stomach, push it away. I find somebody attractive in public and I have that shame response and I push it away. Anything that has that sexual energy just automatically gets pushed away. And so when I hear the question on our mailbag, I don't, what I make up is I don't think it's realistic that the husband's in a binge purge pattern. I don't think he's going a year to 18 months of compulsively pushing this away before he goes back to the other side. I'd be surprised if that was the case.
Okay, so what
At
we've
least the way
established
I think about binge purge.
here is that there are numerous different versions
Hmm.
of what this terminology means, and different components and options, whether someone is doing whack-a-mole and switching addictions or suppressing. I love the beach ball, pushing it under the water, which is the suppression, or the purge. I'm going to come to the question. The question is more of, so we've identified all these definitions. The question is, I see my loved one in this pattern of using behavior, not using behavior. How can I tell if the phase, is it a phase of not using the behavior? Or could it be true recovery, sobriety at work, and good things are happening? How can I tell the difference? So in my mind, this question is, now that we've defined the options, is how do I know if this is on the true and headed in a good direction?
Well,
Or should I be on the lookout? What do you think, Dan?
You're getting Tim was about to talk.
Yep.
Nice. That was intentional. What do I think? Well, I was thinking a couple other things. Another way to look at it, sometimes I'll say we can all hold our breath for different lengths of time.
Mm.
So sometimes, and I think of it, we talk about a sex addictive cycle. There's Carnes has his cycle, in a lot of the books and resources. I think of a binge purge like a macro cycle. Like how long do I go between acting out cycles? That's kind of how I see it. I'm with you, Tim. I think a year and a half would be a long time to suppress behaviors. Uh, that said, I think there's other things. It's not just sexually. I think this shows up in intimacy. Some of the tells I would see um, is the person. I would have a hard time thinking someone's in full recovery if they're kind of shutting down their own vulnerability and connection with themselves and others, their spirituality. I feel like you're going to see probably suppression in a bunch of different areas. How emotionally open are they in their with their partner or their relationship, or are they connected and not isolating? Some of those things. How they some of the maintenance steps, 10, 11, 12, are they engaging those? Are they looking at where they're at fault and promptly admitting them? Are they keeping conscious contact with their higher power? Those are the things I would see if someone in active recovery, um, versus if one's, whatever we're going to call it, in a purge phase, or if they're suppressing the behaviors. I think there's going to be some other tells along the way that you'd start to see.
Mhm.
Everybody's different though, so I'm curious, Tim, what you guys would say. Sometimes you can't see it
Yeah.
from somebody.
I so the one of the things that we've talked on this program about in the past is, the difference between sobriety and recovery. And my shorthand for that is sobriety is about what we don't do, and recovery is about what we do.
Mhm.
And I don't know that I've actually thought about this before, but it's coming to my mind. So I'm going to share it and I'm going to vomit it out here unfiltered. Um, but because of that, I think because they're separate things, because one's about what we don't do and one's about what we do, I think you can like be working on recovery. I think it'll be hampered if you're not sober, but I think you can be working on it if you're not sober. And I think you can be sober without being in recovery. That we know. We talk about that as being the dry drunk.
Mhm.
And so with this person, how do I know if he's in recovery? I think it's actually two separate questions. How do I know if he's actively working on sobriety? Well, is he actively working on sobriety is he going to meetings? Is he making phone calls? Do you see him, if he struggles with online stuff, is he willing to have a filter on his computer and phone? If it's acting out in other ways, is he willing to have a GPS? What are the boundary barriers, whether they're externally um, externally imposed on him, or whether they're internally created by him? Is he willingly engaging in those boundaries, those barriers, those tools, looking for those red flags? And so if you're seeing him doing that, he may be struggling with sobriety, but he's working a program. The other question is he in recovery? Oh, well, so is he in recovery? Is he meditating? Do you see him leaning in and trying to be empathetic? Are you seeing, like you were talking, Dan, about, is he emotionally there? And I don't think you're going to get in recovery and immediately be completely emotionally available, but are we seeing progress in his leaning into being emotionally known? Is he more rigorously honest even when it's hard? So is he leaning into those things? And those things he might be doing and still may relapse from time to time, not because he's not working a good program, but because he's missing some of the boundaries, or there's other pieces that he needs to put in place.
And that would be, I think, another factor of trustworthiness. If someone were to make mistakes or sadly, unfortunately, have a relapse, are they working to acknowledge that mistake, not make that mistake again, look at the pattern, look at the plan, what can I do differently? Do they take that seriously and make adjustments?
Hmm.
And realizing as the three of us are talking about this, really what we're doing was we're outlining these are the things that we look for in trustworthiness, that following through, that dedication, commitment to change, to learning about our own internal defense mechanisms, trying to hear others better, all of the items, the behaviors that show trustworthiness, whether someone's in an on-off pattern or not. So I feel like, oh, our conversation took a little turn here into what are some of the factors of trustworthiness,
Hmm.
whether someone's in an on-off or not.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting question. Would you say that if that recovery activities and trustworthy activities, are they overlapping? Are they parallel?
Or yeah, I would say overlapping. I'm checking myself. Big pause. I would say overlapping. When you say parallel, I don't know what you mean, but I do think someone who's pursuing, like you said, sobriety is what we don't do. Recovery is what we do. It's what we're trying to bring in more to our experience and our lifestyle and our way of being with others. If someone's actively working on that and you can see it and you can hear it, you may not be able to feel it quite yet. I think that's someone who's dedicated to change. And if in my mind, if you're dedicated to change, I don't know that I can trust you to not relapse, but I'm trusting that you're working hard on this. And so I feel like trust to not relapse, that's a really big thing. So I'm going to wind myself back out of this for a sec. I think there comes a point, and I'm curious what you guys think. I think there comes a point for betrayed partners when their addict loved one is working very hard, has good sobriety, working in recovery, and betrayed partners not quite sure, do I really trust yet? That there comes a moment to, how do I say, have informed decision about taking that risk to trust. I'm going to make the decision to continue with this relationship in an informed way, that I'm going to do all I can, and I'm going to trust that this person's going to do all they can, and we'll see where it goes. But I feel like sometimes there's a conscious shift or acknowledgement into, I'm choosing to take the risk to trust them again. Do you guys
But
find?
yeah, I would nuance it a little bit. I found sometimes partners get stuck in trust being binary, like either I have it or I don't, or it's 100% or zero.
Yes.
And I found it really helpful. I know we're not talking we're talking trust and trustworthiness, but I find it helpful to put it on a scale from 0 to 100. What level of trust do you feel right now? And then what act, instead of like, okay, I'm going to go all in and take a blind leap of faith or something. It doesn't have to be that. Okay, let's say I'm actually usually amazed. Usually the people report a higher number than I expect that they will. That the level of trust is higher. Oftentimes,
Mm-hmm.
it's not 100, but are we ever going to get back to 100? I think that's something we have to be realistic about.
Great.
Um, let's just say it's 65. Let's just say it's that number. Okay, what level can I move forward given that number? There might be something to that where I can take a step forward given that level of trust. And also, why is it just a 65? How do we move that to a 70, or how do we start moving that up? And a lot of times, this is where I see that the bread and butter of recovery. It's consistency. It's the addict's lack of consistency. They're sometimes good at showing up and sometimes not. And I don't know, like we need to be more often than 80, 90% consistent for this to really move the needle for trustworthiness.
But
So,
and I think there's also the partner side of that, which is, what is it that the addict can do to rebuild trust? And sometimes that's, like there's the Burkhardt model of trust. You know, I can verify what you're doing, so I trust you. I experience that what you're telling me matches what I experience of you, so I trust you. And then I'm learning to trust you just because I think you're trustworthy. So the addict can do those kind of things. And, the partner can clarify what they need for that trust to be rebuilt. I think there are sometimes, unfortunately, for partners that so much damage has been done. And I think the other question is, even if the addict was working an absolutely solid program and was really solid in their sobriety for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, would I be able to lean in to trust them any more than 50%, 60%? Because there's just been too much damage on my side. And if that's the best that I can get to, what choice do I want to make about the relationship? And so, sometimes it's what's the addict doing to rebuild on their side. And sometimes it's the partner just acknowledging the reality of not where am I at now, but do I really believe that I can move from this?
Mm-hmm. I I love this idea of, continuum of trust. And I certainly did not mean to apply you either have it or don't. You
oh
take,
yeah, yeah, no, I just find that's a
yeah,
trap sometimes that people can get
yeah.
into.
And I like the idea of using this number of what would I need my trust number to be at to continue this relationship, to see where it goes? What number would I need, or what would need to happen for me to increase that number? I think that's a really beautiful way of breaking down into smaller pieces, smaller chunks of a better analysis of one's trust in different situations, but also to continue in this relationship, to move forward in the relationship, what would set me back in the relationship. I'm just in my mind, I'm like, oh, Dan Drake, you just wrote a whole article right there. You could have a really interesting full discussion on that, because that's a lot of great therapy work, that
Yeah,
exploration. Where are you and what do you need to move forward or not?
right.
You know,
So,
I kind of find myself going back to her question,
mhm.
which is, how do I know if he's in solid recovery? How do I actually know if he's in recovery or not, or good recovery? And for me, I think that the answer really comes up with what are you seeing him doing? And if he's in good recovery, I'm making the assumption he's sharing with you sort of his program. And if he's had a relapse after a year or 18 months, is he figuring out what he needs to do? I'm going to put a plug in here for our relapse autopsy.
Mm.
It's in our book, Finding the Way Through. It's also available on our website, willowtreesantarosa.com. But if he's relapsing, is he willing to sort of do a relapse autopsy of some sort to figure out, well, what was going on that after a year or 18 months, I went back into to relapse? And what am I learning from that? And how am I tweaking my program moving forward so that I can avoid that in the future? So is he just relapsing and saying, well, I relapsed, and so now I'm going to get back on the horse and not really leaning in to figure it out? Or does he relapse, take it seriously, and try to figure out what it is, and he's really leaning into his program, and you see him leaning into his program and sharing with you
Mhm.
sort of the aha moments that he's having in his program?
Mhm. Last
Well
thoughts,
said.
Dan?
Well, no, I was going to say I love it as a resource. It's because it tells me a lot as someone willing to actually because it's not a small thing to do. It's what 12 pages. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a
14.
decent amount. 14.
We
So I mean,
expanded.
it's a decent amount of work. But the great thing is that I found. I mean, I've sometimes had clients work through it, work slowly through it, and they learn so much more about themselves because there's usually misses along the way. It doesn't just happen all of a sudden for a certain amount of time. There's usually things that they could have done differently or should have done differently. So I have one more thing just to add to this, if that's okay. It's not uncommon after a certain period of time that someone's recovery program may shift. So let's say they're doing a 90 and 90 meeting, 90 days. They may not do a meeting every day at some point. I'm just curious, how's a partner to say, let's say the level of intensity for their program work that they may have started with, maybe where they are 6 months or a year in. I'm just curious, how does the partner not see that as, oh, he's not that invested in recovery or he's not really doing the work? Like how did what part of that is uh kind of backsliding or could be problematic versus just a regular way recovery goes?
Do you mean how to tell the difference between decrease of frequency or intensity of being a slide
Right,
backwards problem, alert, alert,
right,
or this is a natural progression of one's
right,
recovery
exactly.
process?
Because I could see, I mean, it's not uncommon, especially in these kind of situations. Someone's, quote unquote, got it together, and then they start letting go of the
Yeah.
scaffolding
Yeah.
probably before they've got it. Actually, I mean, I think of your phrase, Tim, that you say a lot, but I also, I say there's no cruise control for recovery, and I think some addicts I've worked with have tried to set cruise control, and usually we're either speeding up or slowing down. Most often they're going to slow down, and it's
Mhm.
going to go the wrong way. So I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there because I
Okay.
see, well, I don't need it, I'm sober, or I see addicts
Mhm.
talking about this stuff. So I see that sometimes being a part of this.
I'm gonna say as I wind us up here on this one, um, I'm glad you brought that up because I think there are really appropriate times that it's good and natural progression when someone's like, I used to go to 3 meetings a week and now I'm going to be going to two and now I'm going to be going to one. But keeping recovery routine, whatever that is, in some form, I would say that's what you're looking for if there's a decrease of service or frequency rate. And all the other things we listed, it's the continuing to have conversation, trying to listen to someone else's perspective, trying to be mindful of how communication goes. All those other good recovery skills, staying present would help show you that this is not a backslide. We haven't seen the entitlement flare up. We haven't seen the arrogance flare up, for example. So that would be one way. I want to close this up and thank the listener for writing in to our mailbag and giving us this good question. Clearly, we had lots to say about it, and I hope it was helpful for you all. And if you're listening, if you could like and share and all the cool things that social media helps, what it does for conversations is that it helps other people find conversations. And so when you click and like and repost and all that kind of stuff, it helps other people find us. So thank you for that. And Tim, if they wanted to send something to the mailbag, what would that email be?
That email would be conversations.sar@gmail.com.
Perfect. Thank you. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.